Well, g'day and welcome to Reality Check Q&A as the world teeters on the edge of what seems like inevitable conflict. God, I hope Iran works itself out. We are, of course, continuing to probe into the questions that you keep asking. And here to help me through it, Meagan Medick.
Hi, Ross. How are you?
I'm very well. I had an exchange of messages earlier on today with a person I know in Iran.
Mhm.
And I have to say, the situation there sounds horrific. I really hope and pray that those brave people taking on the theocratic fascist mullahs are able to achieve what they want to achieve.
Yep, I agree. The videos out of there are so hard to watch and definitely praying for that situation.
Oh, it's horrific. Absolutely horrific. Anyway, fire on.
All right, you got it, Ross. We will start with an email from Jerry. This is about Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War. Hi, Ross. First time asking a question. Normally I just listen, but I couldn't help asking after hearing Pete's comments. It sounded to me like he's including the legacy programs in his new organizational efforts. Your opinion, please, if you watched. I always appreciate your messages. Jerry.
G'day, Jerry. Yes, I did watch. I watched Pete Hegseth very, very closely indeed, because as we know, the Department of Defence is one of the nexus points where things interesting UAP related are converging. And look, I don't think he said anything overtly about UAPs. I think you're talking about an address particularly that he gave earlier this month with Elon Musk at an Elon Musk SpaceX facility. And I did actually keep a note of it because I thought it was fascinating. He declared he was going to dismantle peacetime complacency. He declared the old system dead and mandated tech supremacy in areas like AI, autonomous systems, hypersonics, quantum, directed energy, space dominance, and biotechnology. He's consolidated the Defence Department's systems all under one Chief Technology Officer, a guy called Emil Michael. And he's mandated an AI-first force. It's interesting because whilst he's not saying anything specific about the UAP issue, I assume Pete Hegseth has been briefed in, if not also the President. Well, I know the President has been. Previously, Hegseth's been very guarded on UAPs. He gave a press conference in May last year, and he was asked about aliens in Area 51, and as usual, there was the kind of nervous giggles and titter from the very juvenile members of the press gallery. He responded saying, quote, "I have no evidence of any life beyond this planet or any additional moons or planets that might be out there. Give me a little time. I'll let you know what I found out." And frankly, it's a reflection of the press gallery's, how does one say this, lassitude and disinterest, that nobody's asked him a follow-up question since. Maybe they've all been kicked out of the building because most of the mainstream legacy media are no longer working in the Pentagon building. But I do think, Jerry, you can draw conclusions from Pete Hegseth's announcement about particularly his emphasis on wartime urgency. It kind of aligns with the need for, if you like, no ideological filters, transparency. Maybe somewhere deep in the dark recesses of Pete Hegseth's brain, he has a strategy. I hope so, but my worry is, and certainly the message that I'm getting from most of my sources is, irrespective of the messaging that we're getting from Pete Hegseth, I'm being told a very clear decision has been made to put the UAP issue onto the back burner for now. There's not going to be any government executive disclosure. There's not going to be any movement from Congress. The key members of the UAP caucus in Congress are being effectively nobbled. I just don't think we're going to see any kind of meaningful government disclosure anytime soon. And I don't think that's because Trump is not disposed to be open with the American public. I actually think he is. And I do think the sentiment that I'm getting from key people in his administration is that they are wide open to discussing the UAP issue. But at the right time. I'm also aware, and I want to flag this to people in the Pentagon who are watching, I'm very aware that a decision has been made to keep the location of a certain installation where non-human technology is being stored secret for now, and that there has been internal debate about whether or not there be disclosure of a hitherto undisclosed facility that was being kept illegally from the knowledge of Congress and oversight of the various congressional committees. I'm told what's been happening behind the scenes is that there has been retroactive, more recent attempts to brief up certain key tame members of the Gang of Eight. And it's sad, but I guess if we are moving into a wartime footing at the moment, and God forbid it does look like that's happening. I mean, Trump's making bellicose noises at the time of this recording with Iran. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time this show goes to air, there is conflict in Iran involving American intervention. And of course, there's the ongoing dreadful debacle of Ukraine. So, yeah, I do think, Jerry, there are changes afoot in the Defence Department where Pete Hegseth has indicated a willingness to rattle the cage. And I do think one of the most interesting things is he intends to break up the previous quite monopolistic control that was held by past administrations over the appointment of key committee members. And it does mean, I think, that what we're going to see is a new round of blood in the Defence Department of people who may be more disposed to being more open. Because frankly, I'm being told there is no good reason why there should not be a disclosure. And on that note, let's move on, Meagan.
All right, you got it. We will go to Colts Are Blue on X. Does Ross have anything to add regarding UAP GERB's claim on the location of the biologics? Are there any sources that can confirm?
Well, what you're referring to there is the great work of my dear friend and colleague UAP Gerb, who's a YouTuber and researcher who focuses very much on UAPs and has spent a great deal of time in recent times investigating the purported location of stored non-human technology and the likely location of alleged biologics. And one of the places that he highlights is the Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah, which he says in a recent broadcast on his YouTube channel is a very significant site, potentially involving the study or exploration of biologics. And look, as best I know from my sources, some of whom purport to be first-hand people with knowledge of the legacy program, yes, Dugway is one of those sites. But interestingly enough, I'm not being told it's the key site. The key site is the underground facility I was just referring to, which is still being kept secret. I'm basically being told that there has been a decision made at the top of the administration, probably at the level of the National Security Council and the White House, to keep the UAP issue quiet for now while they deal with the other things on their plate. I am being reassured that there is an intention to be open with the American public that won't involve disclosure of technologies that we've been able to acquire, but it may involve an admission of a non-human intelligence. There's a debate going on about that at the moment. Now, UAP Gerb really does know his homework, and he's, I know, got very, very good sources. We've had him on the show before. So one of the places that he's named, of course, is the Dugway Proving Ground, but that's only one of the locations he cites. He also talks about, in previous historical shows that he's done, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he obviously cites the speculation about how a lot of the Roswell material was taken to Wright-Pat. He's also examined in past shows Area 51 and S4 near Papoose Mountain in the Nevada Test Range, and obviously it's been referenced in work that UAP Gerb's done in the past as a site for operations involving craft and biologics. And certainly the interviews that he did with, I've forgotten his name, Jonathan Weigand, who was the guy who witnessed an alleged UFO that had crashed into a mountain in Peru and witnessed its attempted retrieval by people who were clearly from the Department of Energy. The suggestion is that whatever was taken from that craft, be it biologics, and there were beings allegedly seen there, were taken to the Area 51 Papoose Mountain base. There is also, and people need to be aware of this, I'm giving more credence the more I get into this subject, as incredible as it may sound. I do think that there is evidence that there is connective tunnels between a lot of these bases. Incredible as it may sound, because these tunnels would have to be many hundreds of miles, if not thousands of miles long. It seems preposterous that something like that could be constructed under the noses of the American people, but apparently that has been happening. So UAP Gerb in February last year did a really key interview with my friend and colleague Jesse Michaels, and he described himself as being in touch with first-hand witnesses from military intelligence and private aerospace who have seen craft and biologics. And it may very well be we're talking to some of the same people. This is why I really do think the Trump administration needs to bite the bullet and avoid catastrophic, messy disclosure by taking control of the idiots that are in charge of the program at the moment and assuming some responsibility and authority over them, because they are trying to use the usual tactics of intimidation and bullying to shut people up. And guys, it's not working. I think UAP Gerb's on the money. And I know from my own sources that the sites that he's cited, I'm sure he knows about others. There's another one that both he and I have discussed in the past. I'll let people be the judge of that. But my understanding is that there is a UAP biologics centre on the east coast of the United States. How does one say this? Very close to Washington, D.C. Meagan.
All right, here we go. Steven Greenstreet on X. Has Ross successfully summoned any alien spirits with his psychic powers yet? Please ask.
Okay, so the Steven Greenstreet, this is not a non-partisan player. Steven is a New York Post video editor who purports to be a journalist, who has done his level best to snidely and maliciously attack anyone who is a whistleblower. Frankly, my position with him, I've largely ignored him for the last few years, but he's somebody who I think people need to be extremely wary of. And once I've acknowledged his existence here, I won't be acknowledging his existence again. The interesting thing is that he makes a complete straw man point here. He's asserting or implying that I've said that I can summon aliens with my psychical powers, which of course is a flippant, pejorative and completely misleading comment, which is not based on any factual reality at all. I have never asserted that I have psychical powers, and it's a classic illustration of the kind of straw man argumentation that idiots like Steven Greenstreet are capable of. He's how does one say this? A person who seems to derive a lot of his own meaning from pulling down and attacking people who are very, very courageously making an effort to expose what they know is going on inside an unreported, probably illegally operating covert program inside the National Security Administration. And frankly, his flippancy diminishes and demeans the New York Post. I was more happy to see one of his colleagues, my Australian friend Miranda Devine, asking Trump a good, honest question about UAPs. And did you notice Trump gave a good, solid, honest answer? He didn't treat it with flippancy, and he didn't treat it with the derision and malicious unkindness that Steven Greenstreet treats every potential whistleblower and witness. He's a person best ignored and forgotten and consigned to the rubbish bin of history.
Okay, here we go. Over to Jeffrey Cox on email. Hi, Ross. Have you heard about British filmmaker Mark Christopher Lee's alleged access to Vatican archives and his plan to produce a documentary regarding the Vatican's plan for addressing the church's position regarding first contact? Keep up the good work.
Okay, so I actually looked this up earlier this year because I saw a post, I think it might have been from Mark, who I've been in contact with previously, where he asserted on Twitter that he'd been granted rare access to the Vatican's secretive or secret archives. And the interesting thing is, I've heard no such acknowledgement from the Vatican, which of course they're very unlikely to do. I am aware of other reputable academic researchers who have been given access to the Vatican archives in the past, notably Professor Diana Walsh-Pasulka. And I guess I would be really surprised if Mark has secured this access. I'd be very happy for him if that's the case, because I'm in no doubt at all that the Vatican is a repository of some quite extraordinary documents that go back over 1,000 years recording anomalous phenomena. And it's interesting because a lot of the things that are in religious literature that record angels, beings, when you actually look at the reports, I was told by people who've seen some of these archives, they're often orbs of light. There's another one as well, which I found particularly interesting, that Diana Walsh-Pasulka has talked about in one of her books, where a nun who was living in Italy, of course, in some way was seen, how does one say that, seen by people in Latin America. How that could be the case, or in Central and South America, how that could be the case, I don't know. But basically, she was, when the Spaniards arrived, when the Spanish conquistadors arrived in Central and South America, this Roman Italian nun was already allegedly well known and part of the mythology of people in that area. And the allegation is that she somehow translocated. So yes, the Vatican is an area of mystery. Mark makes some pretty wild claims. He suggests the Vatican has given him access, and that it may be that under this new Pope Leo XIV, they may be preparing for first contact as a major UFO UAP disclosure event this year. I see and hear no evidence of that, and I sincerely hope Mark's right. Mark has previously pushed for the Holy See to declassify hundreds of thousands of declassified documents on potential UFO sightings. So maybe what this is his ambit claim. He's trying to give them a bit of a nudge by using some social media publicity. And he has also speculated what I've speculated in the past, that a lot of biblical texts might describe what are misinterpreted alien encounters. And he also points to the fact that it's on the public record that the Vatican has allegedly collaborated in cover-ups, including the retrieval of the Magenta 1933 craft that crashed under the Mussolini regime and was allegedly passed over to the Americans on or around 1944. It should be emphasized these are Mark's self-reported claims promoted through his interviews, his film and media interviews. And as far as I can see, at the moment, there's no corroboration or confirmation from the Vatican. If it's true, by golly, I wish him the best of luck.
That would be exciting to see. We have Dharma Lion on X. Hi, Ross. Happy New Year. Have you researched into Sergeant Carl Wolf, who claimed to have seen NASA images of structures on the moon, and Donna Hare, who reported NASA airbrushing UAPs out of photos? What are your thoughts?
I'm going to be bringing you a little bit more on this very soon on Reality Check. I'm doing some work on it at the moment. But what I can tell you is I find both Sergeant Carl Wolf, who sadly died in a very strange motorcycle accident, and Donna Hare, who I think is still alive, I find both of them very credible. Carl Wolf was a former US Air Force sergeant who went public saying that when he was working in the Air Force, he had a top secret crypto clearance, and I think he was asked to repair a bit of machinery in a room at NASA. And for some reason, while he was in that room, one of the technicians in the room said, "Have a look at this," and showed him what looked like artificial structures that the person was involved in airbrushing out on imagery from the moon's surface. He said that they were high resolution photographic mosaics, I think, of the far side of the moon, and they showed multiple artificial structures. Now, this is an allegation that won't go away, and I do note that recent released video and high imagery photography from all sides of the moon shows no such artificial structures. But he pointed to tall, tower-like buildings, large spherical domed structures, objects resembling Quonset huts or some kind of shaped building, clustered formations. Now, what's interesting is I'm talking to other people who say, contrary to the officially released imagery, they've been able to see artificial objects and indeed movement of anomalous objects on the moon. So hopefully we'll be bringing you more on this in a future reality check. Looking forward to it.
All right, here's an email from John in the UK. Hi, Ross and Meagan. If humans and other life forms are being observed by NHI, do you think the NHI are using Earth as a laboratory, a farm, a zoo, or something else? Thanks for all you do for this topic. Cheers, John.
Wow. Okay, you're inviting me to speculate. Okay, so I'm speculating here. I find it very interesting that good people like Whitley Strieber and other people I speak to, multiple people, I'm talking to a quite probably, I don't know, over half a dozen women at the moment who say they believe that their eggs have been taken and that in some cases some have been told by purported non-human intelligences that they are being used by non-human intelligences to hybridize humans. It's one hell of an allegation, and frankly, other than the fact that there are, and I do believe this is the case, women who have suffered phantom pregnancies. They're pregnant one minute, their babies are gone the next, and it's quite clear from the medical examinations they were pregnant and there's no explanation for where their baby has gone. Yeah, I do sadly think that there is some evidence that a non-human intelligence is tinkering with humans. And I think that might explain the abduction phenomenon, if the abduction phenomenon is real. I think also there's a human conceit here. We think we're the focus of the attention by the NHI. Maybe it's the planet they're worried about. Maybe they don't give a rat's ass about us humans. maybe we have a human Homo sapiens conceit. Maybe it's the beautiful planet they're wanting to preserve, not us humans, and they're really not that worried about us humans. All of this, of course, is totally speculative, but I think the evidence is beginning to be quite convincing, if not overwhelming, that there are non-human intelligences that have been taking a very close interest in human reproduction. Whitley Strieber, for example, says he believes his semen has been taken, and obviously he believes that there's some kind of breeding program underway. I mean, it sounds wacky, and it's so easy to laugh about and titter and ridicule. But I get literally thousands of messages from people who are pleading with me to take this issue seriously. And I can't discount the abduction phenomenon out of hand. It's either the largest mass psychosis in human history, or there are people suffering quite frightening events on occasion where they're purportedly taken, and where it does appear the animals or the beings are taking an interest in their reproductive system, and it does appear that semen and eggs are being taken from men and women. What lies behind all of that? I don't know.
Okay, Russ, we were going to go to a post on X from Wonder Twin number 1. What was actually shot down over Alaska and Canada in 2023? 3 objects were said to have been downed, but none were ever shown or talked about again. UAP number 20 was the name given to one of them.
Okay, well, we do know that the Chinese balloon was a Chinese balloon, and there was pretty convincing evidence it was a Chinese balloon because we got I think, video or imagery from a U2 that examined the object. I have done, and you can go back and have a look in the Reality Check archives, I've done a story in the past on my grave suspicions about the retrieval operation in Alaska, where massive, truly massive amounts of money were spent on a retrieval of what the United States Air Force and certain figures in the administration have repeatedly attempted to suggest was just a balloon, some kind of weather or observation balloon. Now, I can imagine governments overreacting, and I do think that it's interesting to see the media reaction from February 2023 when there were these purportedly 4 overflights over the continental United States, over North America, by objects, one of which we now know to be a Chinese balloon because it was recovered in the ocean. But there were 3 other objects, and we've been quite open in our suspicions here at Reality Check that the object that was recovered, and it was recovered, I'm told, by military personnel that there was a recovery, and by golly, if this was an observation balloon or a weather balloon and they spent the resources that they spent on that recovery, it was the biggest waste of public money in human history because literally dozens of aircraft and on-the-ground personnel were involved in a retrieval operation that took weeks. And there are people up in Alaska who frankly had the bejabbers scared out of them from talking to us anymore, but who were posting imagery of the aircraft and personnel on the ground showing what was a massive retrieval operation. Now, what was it that was recovered in Alaska? We don't know. Moving on to Yukon. Yes, there is a reference to UAP 20, which I think is interesting in itself. It's a document that was obtained under Canadian FOI. And frankly, it acknowledges that whatever the object was, it was an unidentified anomalous phenomena object, a UAP object, which may just be the categories that they use until they've been able to identify the object. But I thought that was very interesting. I am told that parts of the object were retrieved. And I've been told that by people from Canada, Canadian military. They've been told to shut up by the Americans. Now, look, it may be, we have a saying in my line of work, which is always assume a fuck up before a conspiracy. Maybe the Americans are just embarrassed because they spent multiple tens of millions of dollars on a retrieval operation that ended up recovering a very battered weather balloon that had been put up by a bunch of students. And maybe they were embarrassed that they spent, say, $500,000 on a missile fired from an F-22 fighter at high altitude. Maybe that's the explanation. But what I don't understand is, under the new administration, if they knew that the Biden administration had spent tens of millions of dollars on retrieving bits of old weather balloons, wouldn't they go public with it? Wouldn't they reveal it? This is the thing I don't understand, is why has the media so lamely and passively stopped asking questions about this? And I don't include us at Reality Check here. We've been hammering the Defence Department about this for years now. It's been 2 years nearly since the February 2023 incident. 3 years nearly, sorry. And frankly, we don't know any answers. We don't know any answers about that or the next incident, which was the Lake Huron incident. And the Lake Huron incident is one that I do suspect was possibly just an observation balloon because the military, I think there was a released report which acknowledged that they could see strings hanging down from the object, which is consistent with something being held in a balloon and some kind of a weather systems gondola being held underneath it. But yes, there were, I think, anomalous objects shot down by F-22 fighters over both Alaska and the Yukon in 2023, and we've never received an answer about what they were. And frankly, tens of millions of dollars of public money in the United States has been spent on these retrieval operations. I don't understand, I really truly don't understand why people who call themselves journalists in the American legacy media don't continue to push and ask questions. And isn't it interesting? I mean, I'm just emphasizing the contrast here behind the hysteria that took place in that February 2023 event when all of these objects were flying over the States. And it got momentum because in Congress, certain Republican mainly Republican leaders saw a political opportunity to embarrass the administration over the national security implications of unhindered overflights by potentially Chinese surveillance balloons. And they made merry with it, and it became a huge media issue. But witness the contrast between that and what's continuing to be going on with these unidentified objects that are still untold, maneuvering over civilian and military facilities across not only the United States, but also aerodromes, military and civilian aerodromes in Europe. I've been talking to people as recently as earlier this week in Netherlands, where, frankly, there are objects that are still being seen by military personnel that cannot be engaged or shot down with the world's best counter-UAS technology. And there's just meek silence from much of the media who accept the lame explanation from the military that these are just Russian drones. I mean, the implications of that, if that's true, are extraordinary, because not only does it mean that the Russians are actively and aggressively surveilling key strategic sites in Western Europe and the US with impunity, it means that we lack the ability to shoot those objects down because those objects are so advanced. And yet, what's the noise coming from the rest of the legacy media? Crickets.
Absolutely, Ross. So we possibly could be in danger and we're out of money, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's something mysterious going on with the ongoing so-called drones mystery and the hypocrisy of much of the legacy media in giving the issue stick back in February 2023 compared with now, with an ongoing issue that I think is far more serious, is just quite extraordinary.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ross. That is the end of the questions.
Oh, okay, we've done. Hey, listen, if anyone wants to ask me questions, and I will do your best to answer them, you can contact us at realitycheck@newsnationnow.com. And of course, we now broadcast not only on this YouTube channel and occasionally on News Nation, we also have our podcasts in audio on Audible, Spotify, and all the best podcast platforms. So too much Reality Check is barely enough. Listen to it while you drive.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.